¿A dónde está papi? 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 ¿A dónde está papi?
Welcome to the Monday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Monday. Welcome, everybody. Derry Bennett, Alio with the Tier 1 sub, kicking things off for a 39-month sub anniversary. I appreciate that. Thank you. Heat, welcome. Michael Hausler, welcome. Whew, do we have quite the amount of things to talk about today. Hey, bud, how are you? I'm hanging in there. All right, folks. We probably should get this started since time is limited. So, okay, got everything ready to go. Before we get started, this weekend we had a what I would say was a pretty successful movie night. This is a third movie night that we've done, and I'm pretty happy about it so far. at the last Saturday of every month. We're trying to continue and make that a thing. The last Saturday of February is going to be February 24th. If you want to partake in said movie nights, join the Discord. It's free. So that's cool. That's right. Subscribe, like the stream on the YouTube, which reminds me, I got to check everything there. And consider checking out the merch store as well. I appreciate all the support, guys. You guys are amazing, and you guys are what makes this go. Thank you for the new subscriptions, by the way. I appreciate that. All right, folks, we gotta get started. Ali with the 11 biddies. Thank you. I appreciate that. How come it's not showing up? Maybe I missed it. See, there's no... Where's my alerts? Heat with the 10 biddies. Thank you. Look at that. There's no alerts. I posted a big news in Whisper is already accused by multiple women of sexual abuse. Brock Lesnar is named as the third man in the case brought against Vince McMahon for sex trafficking. Jesus. I'll be honest, I'm not a very big like wrestling fan. I don't really know much about wrestling at all. It like what little I do know what little I do know, Vince McMahon, whatever his name is, strikes me as a very sleazy individual. Like he just strikes me as like a very, very sleazy individual. Oh, it's pronounced McMahon. Welcome to Simulacra. Is a very bad person. You know, it doesn't surprise me. It really doesn't. He strikes me as like a very sleazy individual. Vince's wife worked in Trump's cabinet. Wow. Brock Lesnar was implicated in the lawsuit filed against Vince McMahon by former WWE employee Janelle Grant, in which McMahon was accused of sex trafficking, sexual assault, and emotional and physical abuse. Physical abuse was Lesnar was not directly named. He was confirmed by the Wall Street Journal to be the wrestler that McMahon directed Janelle Grant to produce personalized sexual content for, among other incidents. Jesus. This does not surprise me. You saw the Royal Rumble? No. I don't know what that is, unfortunately. Yeah, so, I mean, just from what little of what I know about McMahon, he just strikes me as like a very, very sleazy person, and, yeah. I also, like, this was nothing new, but like also the way he I remember seeing something to the effect of like how he treated or how he treats wrestlers in terms of like I could have sworn I saw a documentary on this, on like how he treats like wrestlers and completely shafts them when it comes to like their pay and stuff like that. Like, I vaguely remember a story of something to that effect. He also covered up a murder, too, by Jimmy Snuka. Jeez. That's wild. Like attracts like Trump and friends, the perverts. Well, yeah. The movie and pop culture was afraid of banning from Twitch and YouTube reading of Vince's sex text. No, I don't plan on trying to find or go into it. I trust I trust that the implication or assertion here that he's a incredibly disgusting person. I don't need to look into that any further. I believe it. WWE wrestlers like UFC fighters are not employees; they're contract. Yeah, but like specifically, Vince McMahon was like super terrible on that end. I don't know if it's the same. Like I don't know. I don't exactly like keep up with like the UFC or anything like that. Twitch's double toasted channel was afraid of banning from Twitch and YouTube reading out Vince's text. No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not. I'm not fine. I'm not looking for that, and I'm not reading that. I believe it. I believe it. Like there's no surprise that this dude's allegedly engaged in like sex trafficking or doing some sleazy stuff like that. Not surprised. Not surprised at all. All right, folks, we got to get going. Oh, hey, there it is. There's my alerts. I guess they don't show up on the main one because I think I took them off or something. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe the main screen doesn't show alerts because I didn't put it on. Studio mode. Let's check it out. Oh, it's because I do have the overlay shut off. My bad. Just ignore me.
If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, that's the
you
game
wouldn't have
theory
done
I was
that.
talking
You
about.
wouldn't have. You
No,
wouldn't
and
have done
that's
that
not,
before.
That's not an immediate.
No, you wouldn't
that's
have done
not
that
who I
before.
am. That's
No.
not what I believe.
It is the reality the left has
but
created.
Oh, man. Phenomenal clip, huh? He would have done that before. Yeah.
Your ears are not deceiving you, my friends. You heard that correctly. The left made Charlie Kirk racist.
True.
Yep. See, it's the left's fault that Charlie Kirk is
What's like that? It reminds me of that meme where it's like the dude, it's like a 4-panel thing, and like the dude just keeps putting, like, he starts shaving his head, he starts putting swastikas, and at the last panel is like, oh, you know, I was made to do this. Okay, look what you made me do. I remember hearing all the same stuff about affirmative action in the 90s. Yeah. Oh, this is not new. You know, it went from like affirmative action to, what is it, political correctness, to wokeness, to CRT, to DEI now, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Like it's just all the same repackaged garbage over and over and over again. It's definitely not new. You're absolutely correct. MAGA and Trump friends are racist and perverts. What a surprise. Makes me think of the guy on the bike who falls over. Yeah, the guy on the bike with the stick that he puts in the stick. It's like, the left made me do this.
suspicious of black pilots specifically when that's not really who he is. He swears, but because of this push for diversity from the left, he's now forced to side-eye anyone who's
True. I saw the same thing from this Nazi lady, Lauren Witzke, whatever her name is. Basically, like, she put she captioned a video of just like black people having fun on the freaking ski lift or whatever it's called. They're just having fun playing music, and then like her title is like, "Oh, diversity hits the slopes" or something like that. Like, come on, man, jeez.
Black and assume that they're there specifically because they're black and not because they're qualified. See,
I also saw the same nonsense from I forgot who. It was a lady. She said something to the effect of like, "Oh, if I see another women, a full like women crew for the airplane or something." Swift derangement syndrome continues on Fox. A new poll come out shows a big percentage of Swifties will vote for whoever she endorses. Fox begs people not to listen to Swift about politics. Well, I can guarantee you that no one listening to Fox News is going to listen to Taylor Swift about politics. And also, like, while it's good that I remember the last thing that she did was like help register a bunch of people. Like just to be clear, no one should be getting politics from a celebrity. Okay, no one should be getting politics from a celebrity. If we have time, we'll get to it. Thinking Sabercat. Firefly, welcome.
in general, pilots are required to have college degrees. They're required to have 20/20 vision and not be colorblind. They're required to pass background checks and complete.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm not saying that she did a bad thing. Getting people to register to vote is great. I was only saying, yeah, just make sure that, like, it's kind of weird, and kind of cult-like if you get your politics from, like, celebrities, okay? But on that note, it's good that, you know, she got a lot of people to register.
Written exams, not to mention 1,500 hours of flight time before they're able to obtain their pilot license. But, you know, if they're black, they don't have to do any of that. They don't have to have the same qualifications. They just show up with their resume, let the people know who does the certification that they're black, and then they get a plane within a week. That's how it works. The stupidity here is just, it's so insane to me. And just the blatant racism here is... It's not
again. It's not stupidity. It's literally like just. I mean, I guess it is, but it's literally just racism. Like the whole point is just is just racism. It's not. You know, there's nothing logical. There's nothing logical here. It's just racism. That's it. Apparently, Kirk forgot about black Republicans. It's just racism. There's no logic. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Like if the only conclusion that you arrive at when you see like a person of color like getting at the head of a airplane is like, oh, I bet they only got that job because of, like, come on, man. Come on. Do you know how hard it is to freaking become a pilot? Okay? And it's true. What Figueroa is saying, it's true. To become a pilot, you have to go through a lot of stuff. And no, you don't get just hired because they see that you're a person of color and are like, oh, yep, here you go. That's not how this works at all.
not shocking. Like, I don't think shocking is the right word. I just think that I'm a bit surprised that he's not trying more to hide it. But he went on to further
Well, the reason why they don't need to hide it more is because, like, that's the normalized position, right? Like that's the accepted way of thinking within the conservatives. Like that's perfectly acceptable to say this thing, to say these things out loud to your audience. You don't get coverage if you hide it. That's true. That's true. I guess Charlie judges pilots based on the movie Flight. Why do they assume pilots are only black now? Does Charlie Kirk think African Airways is only white dudes there? The story of the Red Tails, the last George Lucas movie where he directed about an all-black group of World War II fighter pilots. Yeah, I don't know. It's just racism thinking, Sabercat. It's literally just racism.
Explain his racist thinking. So let's listen.
I want just like cookie cutter, like
pilot.
yeah, this is so
DEI in the cockpit. Oh man. I haven't seen it either, to be honest. Hey, listen, you know what? Why don't you just stop flying, okay? Just don't fly anywhere, Charlie.
so easy to me. I don't want LaQuisha James.
They have
who
that like
comes up-
pilot voice.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Holy racism, Batman. Whew. Charlie's doing this for views. He knows it's dumb. Yeah, I mean, like, this is just appealing to the least common denominator, right? This is okay and normal to spew out to your audience. To the conservative audience. Who's the guy on the right? He looks familiar. I don't know.
And she's just like, "Hi, ladies and gentlemen, pray for me."
Oh my god. Whew. Yeah, this isn't getting any better.
And the truth is it's just this is a creation that the left wanted because
And they think you can't say anything about it because they'll call you a racist. And this is where we really have to take the gloves off and say your name calling will not get in the way of
You accurately describing me will not get in the way of me accurately acting what you're calling me. Acting like what you're calling me. Okay? Don't let you know, people calling you out for your racism stop your racism, okay?
people's safety at 35,000
they're like
feet.
it's offensive to
It is so interesting to me that he specifically attributes a lack of safety to black pilots, yet he thinks it's outrageous to call them racist. He's not citing any study or statistic indicating that black pilots in particular are worse than white pilots, and he's not doing that because that's not the case.
Yeah, you're asking the least common denominator here to provide like facts or whatever. No. Racism is a source of income. True. Trump cares more about black people communities than black people themselves. Wow, dude, phenomenal stuff. Except that's not true. It's like a Trump rally, 5 hours, and then first row, blacks for Trumps. Yeah, blacks for Trumps. Those aren't they like incredibly like reactionary? Like that group is like, I think, aren't they like black Israelites or something like that? They're incredibly reactionary.
But he's just choosing to make that connection in his own head. That if they're black, I'm going to assume that they're not qualified. But don't you dare call him racist. Now, just so we're clear, when he says cookie cutter, he means white. That's what he means. But by his logic, we should actually assume that we're less safe with male pilots since men are statistically more likely to be colorblind than women. It's estimated that 1 in 12 men are colorblind compared to 1 in 200 women. But I mean, he doesn't seem to worry about male pilots and think, gee, I hope that they're not colorblind. In fact, if you watch that segment more, they said they'd prefer to have a male pilot, somebody named Chad with a southern accent. But he...
Wait, so... they'd rather fly, like if Chad with a southern accent has never taken a pilot class in his life, they would prefer that over a completely qualified like person of color. Phenomenal thinking. Even if that were the case, black pilots perform worse. This doesn't imply it's because of the skin color, so the conversation is mute as much as he tries to correlate those. Yeah, no, it's just racism. Like, there's no, like, there's no point in to try to logic something that doesn't have any logic, you know? I mean, there's not many good black ski jumpers. I don't think it's because of melanin, though.
He's not saying, man, I really hope that I have a female pilot because they're less likely to be colorblind, because that would be absurd, right? He knows there are specific qualifications that pilots have to meet to become certified and get licensed. But when it comes to black pilots in particular, you just can't be too sure.
I mean, there's not many good. Sorry, I thought Charlie Kirk was on a no. I thought Charlie Kirk was on a no-fly list. That's a good question or point. I don't know if he's actually in a no-fly list, or did he end up like? I don't know. I don't know if that ended up being true or not. I think one of these far-right clowns, complained about being in a no-fly list. I don't know if he was one of those people. But yeah. When I went into a client side as a computer consultant, I fought racism every time. Yikes.
Yeah, and as Good Politic Guy put it, Boeing spent years cutting corners, spending billions on stock buybacks, getting government handouts, prioritizing shareholder over safety, and the right takes this story of corruption and is just like, no, the issue is black people. Exactly. You know, there's a word for that, but it's not quite coming to my mind. I think it starts with an R, racing. I don't know, but there's something that people call that, right? But I mean, to be fair, Charlie Kirk isn't just worried about black pilots. He's also fearful about black people in other important jobs. For example, he doesn't want a black surgeon as well.
Surgeon and flight are the top two, where it's like no one really cares when it's HR managers. No one cared when it was, just kind of paper shufflers or even engineers. But now when it's like, wait, hold on a second. You're going to remove my appendix and you're a black lesbian?
Yeah.
Well, you bring these.
It's so interesting to me.
Whew. Yikes. Ben Carson? No, we're not going to talk about that, right? I hope someone shits in his food. I know Nick Fuentes was on a no-fly list. Destiny literally had to sort out a pickup for a railway station. I mean, Destiny does anything for a friend, doesn't he?
To me, that black people always come up in his mind first when he's concocting these hypothetical examples of somebody not being qualified. So you're probably asking, what is the context here, right? Because he can't be that blatantly racist, can he? There's got to be some underlying argument that gives him a little bit of plausible deniability, right? Well, no. This is just pure unadulterated racism. But conservatives think it's okay to be suspicious of black people if you're talking about them within the confines of DEI, which stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now, DEI has become a bit of a buzzword or a buzz acronym, kind of like CRT, because it allows them to cloak their racism in an intellectual facade when in actuality it's just racism. At least they think that it's kind of helping to hide their racism when it's not. But DEI is a push largely by corporations and organizations to include marginalized groups.
Whether he believes it or not is irrelevant. He's still spreading it. Yep. I don't believe Charlie believes 90% of stuff he says. It's just money. That may be the case. I don't know. But yeah. Well, they weren't friends, but they were just doing debates back in 2021. Yeah, no, they weren't friends. They were just, continually palling around. I don't know, man. Personally, I wouldn't be palling around with a freaking Nazi. I mean, it can be depending. I think cynicism is far more nefarious than genuine ideology. Maybe, but the point being is that he's still doing it. The point being is that he's still spreading. He's still doing the racism, right? Like even if it's like, even if his underlying beliefs have nothing to do with anything, he's just doing it for money. While that may be the case, that it's more cynical and more nefarious because he's doing this on purpose. He's fleecing the racist for money. Doesn't make it any better. Okay, doesn't really make it any better because at the end of the day, the outcome is the same. Cat Snack, welcome.
that have been historically excluded from certain positions despite having the same qualifications as their white counterparts, which is key. It's a good thing in actuality, just like CRT is also a good thing, contrary to popular belief. But conservatives view inclusion as them being replaced, or perhaps they just don't want to share spaces with black people and people of color. So rather than just saying that, they'll invoke DEI or affirmative action to complain about the presence of black people and people of color.
Republicans would give you universal health care if oil donors asked. Nah, not a chance. They'll say that the oil, they'll just say that they've gone woke or something, and that they're trying to implement corporate communism. I think, I think most of the right wing is pretty ideological. Like, they're not moving. They're not moving from these type of positions.
Traditionally white spaces. See, if they didn't like seeing people of color in historically white spaces like a college campus, for example, they think it sounds less racist if they say, hey, that person, should they be here? It must be because of affirmative action. They must have not worked as hard as me to get here. Now, DEI to them is the new affirmative action, but it's better because they can apply it to more things. But DEI is a sort of get out of jail free card to them when it comes to racism, because it allows them in their mind to basically give themselves a pass for their own racism. And so long as they invoke it, what they say is not racist. So if you don't want to see a black person as your pilot because you're racist, you can simply play the DEI card and concern troll about their qualifications rather than just admitting that you're a racist and you think they're inferior. And that's how they think it shields them from accusations of racism. And that's exactly
right, but it's not. McConnell admitted himself that he fakes a border crisis to help the GOP. Right, but the point being is that they're not. It's an entirely fake. It's an entirely fake border crisis, but they ideologically believe, like their ideology dictates that this is what they need to do, and regardless of not, you know, their base believes it, and their base are what gives them the power. Their base are what's gonna go vote. That's manufactured. Even Republicans don't want to go full overturning Roe because it would they would lose their talking points. So they had to move the goalpost. Well, I agree that the whole border thing is manufactured. But how do we explain, how do we explain Roe being overturned? I'm not saying it's not racism, I'm hideous, or hideous, I'm saying it's worse. Sadly, if the GOP could say Biden is dead to help themselves, the GOP would. Because it's so sleazy and cynical. But that's just like being sleazy and cynical is like standard procedure for politicians, right? Mostly. But I believe that a lot of this is ideologically driven. I believe this is a lot of this is driven by ideology. It just so happens that this aligns in this manner. The base doesn't like the GOP; they like Trump. Well, yeah, because they like Trump because they feel like that's the guy who most represents them.
exactly what Charlie Kirk is doing here. But if what he said just sounds like regular racism to you, congratulations, your brain still works properly. This is overt racism from someone who is very prominent within Republican circles in the Republican Party. And if you're wondering whether or not prominent conservatives plan to distance themselves from him after making these blatantly racist remarks, no, they're not. In fact, they're doing the opposite. They are coming out to defend him and insisting that what he said that you just heard is not actually racist.
Right. So, like, this is how, like, because if it's true that they're just, like, trying to exploit the ideology, then, like, I don't know, like, wouldn't this be, like, a little bit too far? Kiki James, thank you for the follow. I appreciate it. My prediction: Trump will get 75% of his last vote as the numbers of dead MAGA from COVID. I think it would be interesting to observe, as I remember when he, for about 3 months, was booed for taking the vaccine. Trump is the perfect example of cynical opportunism. There's no ideology there except for self-serving shit. Well, there may be something there. They don't care about the actual policies. They just want someone who says angry stuff. And yeah, they like the idea that he hates the same people, or he hates the same, or espouses the same hate that they want to say but can't.
Here's what popular YouTuber The Quartering had to say in response.
I don't necessarily. I mean, I don't care. I know that, like.
Yeah, we know, Jeremy. We know. Okay? We know you're also a racist clown.
I don't view that as an overtly racist comment, because not only, I mean, the context is
like, what is the context? Okay, and how is it not overtly racist if the only concern you have is whether or not your pilot is of a certain color? Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. What matters is whether or not they're licensed and whether or not they've had, like, what context are we missing here? I mean, like, listen, bro, you can make your Olympic levels of mental gymnastics to try to justify it, because at the end of the day, you feel that same way too. Isn't it called the dog whistle from MAGA? There's no dog whistling at this point, right? It's pretty, it's pretty out there. The GOP hates Trump, but they're stuck with him because the base loves him and wants to Trump to do naughty things with their wives. Jesus. What is racist to these people? I don't see a growing support, as even the alt-right have none of the passion they had in 2016 as Trump did hardly anything, and they were for their weird demographic, and lots were pissed off with Trump in Saudi Arabia and Israel. Maybe not. I don't know. Like, I don't see Trump's base expanding. I see it being more consolidated. I see Trump's base being more consolidated.
right on the screen. It says DEI in the cockpit. You know, like it's just.
So, like, here's a question. Why isn't it racist? Okay? Because I guarantee you that he can't answer that question. None of these guys can. Why isn't the fact that you are zeroing in on whether or not the pilot is of one skin color or another, particularly black, as Charlie Kirk very adamantly pointed out, how is that not racist? Answer that question. He's big in the GOP, but outside those circles, not as good. No, I think most of Trump's base is consolidated. Most of that base is consolidated. It may not be growing, but it ain't going anywhere.
You know, I would also maybe add women to that. And as many people know, I'm also a misogynist, just to be clear. Okay. Also, lack of policies beyond being a dictator and doing the day one of the road. Trump has nothing to offer. Yeah, but they don't really care per se. I've never known the average GOP voter to be like, yes, I remember that Trump did this specific policy that he, like, no, they don't care. They just like the fact that they can be outwardly as hateful as they believe they're able to now. It does not matter. Policy isn't exactly important. Like, I guarantee you, like, if you ask, like, a real, like, MAGA cultist, like, a serious MAGA cultist, like, what specific policy they like about Trump, like what specific policy that he enacted that they were really in favor of and how it benefited them, they couldn't answer that question. The gathering now includes women. How discriminatory. Yeah, he's very misogynistic.
My wife is a pilot, very competent one.
Well, I'm sure his wife is thrilled to have conservatives question her competency because of DEI. You know, he says that she's competent even though she's a woman, but she is still a woman, so who can really say? But you see how Charlie Kirk invoking DEI...
Jeez, man. His poor wife.
Basically had the same effect as an Uno reverse card here. Because the quartering, if you watch the full video, you can kind of see the gears turning in his head. He's like, man, this sounds racist, but he did play the DEI card, so I guess he's not. You know, the DEI card, I guess it really is magical. It worked on other conservatives as well. For example, Matt Walsh defended Charlie Kirk on Twitter saying...
Yeah, Matt Walsh, yes, known not racist.
No, it's not racist. Don't be ridiculous. The point Charlie Kirk is making, that when you hire people based on DEI instead of skill and merit, you create this kind of wariness and suspicion.
Okay, but here's the problem. And of course, like, Matt Walsh knows this. Matt Walsh, these people know this. Matt Walsh knows this, okay? Like, the problem then, the question would then be like, so have you checked what the hiring guidelines are in the airlines that you're trying to fly in? Because I guarantee you that the hiring guidelines will require you to be completely trained. This isn't very hard to Google, okay? Like, the hiring guidelines of, like, American Airlines isn't going to be, like, be a person of color. Check. That's not how this works, and it's pretty silly to think otherwise. Oh, Matt, once a girl gets a period, she's marriage material. Walsh, yeah. There's a lot of those type of comments with Matt Walsh.
DEI policies have done that, not Charlie Kirk. Of course, a black pilot could be perfectly qualified, but when United announces, quote, we're going to hire more black pilots, we are left to wonder if any one particular pilot is there because he's the best or if he's there because he fills the demographic quota.
Again, like, this is absurd to think. This is absurd to think that, like, oh, you're going to be allowed to fly a plane, okay, just because you're a person of color. No training necessary. Just apply, okay? I think he's implying that they get a pass, but it's likely the opposite. Yeah, no, that's not how this works. Even if, like, even if it's the case that they're, like, trying to hire, a bit more diverse crew, it's not going to change the fact that these pilots, crew, engineers, whatever, surgeons, have to they have to be, trained and licensed and, educated in whatever it is that they're going to do. They got rid of affirmative action, so I don't see what the issue is. I don't know. It says black pilots constitute up 2% of all pilots in the U.S. That's what they're complaining about?
Get rid of DEI and all forms of affirmative action, and this concern disappears. Notice how he just assumes that they're there because they're black and they didn't undergo any of the same procedures to get qualified as the white pilots. But conservative intellectual Jordan Peterson also chimed in saying, yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Wow. Phenomenal. Yeah. The other intellectual titan, Jordan Peterson.
Yeah, no. Live by die, die by die. Diversity, inclusivity, equity. But Tim Pool also chimed in, responding to a liberal account calling Charlie Kirk racists.
Yeah, Tim Pool, known centrist.
saying, Ed knows exactly what Charlie is saying, that racist hiring policies give him pause, not that he thinks race plays a factor in skill. Now, note that Tim Pool is unironically arguing that it's actually racist to finally start hiring black people and people of color, which is a very interesting take here. But my favorite response comes from this large right-wing account on Twitter, which says people are trying to say Charlie Kirk is racist because of this. Man, why would they say that? I don't think this has anything to do with race, but more so to do with how they've weaponized race via DEI to justify placing unqualified.
I'm sorry, but if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, bro, I hope he's qualified. You know, why don't you do that? Next time you fly Charlie Kirk, why don't you do that? And let me know how that goes. What qualifies Charlie Kirk to talk in a public space? Nothing really. Nothing of value, and nothing of value is being put here. So they're implying the only reason they have black pilots is because of progressive policies, not because of skin color. It doesn't really make it better. It's the same. Yeah. It's just racism. That's why I asked. How is it not racist? If the only thought process that you have is like, oh man, this is a person of color, I hope they're qualified. How did you think they got the job, dude?
Individuals into positions that are jeopardizing the safety of others. Thank you so much for clearing that up.
So are you saying that airlines are literally risking their entire business because they just wanted to hire somebody because they were a person of color? How does that work out? Like, explain the logic behind. And like, obviously they wouldn't be able to go past like even the first layer. So it's just racism. It's just racism. This is where I delineate between people who are cynically exploiting racial prejudice for money and attention versus ideological racism. I think cynicism is worse because it's far more slippery. Yeah, I mean, sure. But at the end of the day, like, the people, like, the outcome is to spread more racism. Whether that means like this person is even worse for doing it just because he knows it's wrong, but he's doing it for profit, or he's doing it just to, make money. And they may be worse people. But the point being is that at the end of the day, the outcome is the same. And it's like, for all intents and purposes, like, the outcome, is what matters. Airline industry doesn't want lawsuits, right? And also they wouldn't want their airplanes falling out of the sky because they're just hiring random people. That's not how this works at all. These people allow ideologues to gain power because of opportunism. Right. They're all dog shit people. True.
Really appreciate it. I personally thought that it had everything to do with race, considering the fact that Charlie Kirk literally said, and I quote, "If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified." But, since he played the DEI card, I guess we just have to assume it's not racist.
Yeah, so how is it not racist? That's the question, because like Charlie Kirk can't answer that. The Quartering can't answer that. Matt Walsh can't answer that.
This is exhausting. Exhausting. Now, he predictably doubled down and addressed all of the conservatives who had his back, and he was touched. Quote, "Really encouraged by the amount of support and backup I've received over the DEI pilot segment. What I said is 100% true. DEI fosters unhealthy suspicions and promotes skin color over excellence. We won't stop telling the truth regardless of how much they call us racist." It's funny how he can't not tell on himself, because he says DEI fosters unhealthy suspicions of black people in particular, when in fact, he is the one who's suspicious. Nobody else is saying that they're suspicious of black pilots and black people in general because of DEI. He's saying that.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I don't go into an airplane or into a bus or whatever. Like, that's not on my mind. I'm not thinking like, oh man, there's a black person at the head of this bus or plane or whatever. I hope they're qualified. Like, who does that except, racists? Citations needed if that's the case. There's not going to be citations. The U.S. Department of Transportation Division. Yeah, you can't. You can't discriminate in the workplace. Essentially,
He's the one making the connection between black people and them being inherently less qualified because of DEI. It's funny. He has these thoughts that he assumes everyone else is having, but it's just him. Now, to be clear, it's not just his comments about black pilots that fosters suspicion, if you will, that Charlie Kirk may or may not be a racist. I'll let you be the judge of that. It's his belief that black people shouldn't have civil rights as well. I think that's probably even more racist than what he says about black pilots.
Wanda Monkey, welcome.
Because as Wired reports, quote, Kirk argues that the Civil Rights Act, which bars discrimination on the basis of race, ushered in a permanent DEI-type bureaucracy referring to diversity, equity, and inclusion. See, civil rights are bad because that's DEI too. In other words, you can literally oppose equal rights for black Americans, but so long as you play the DEI card, nobody gets to call you racist, apparently. That's the rules. But
Yeah, phenomenal. Like that's about as like explicit as possible. Because like essentially if you don't believe that like the Civil Rights Act is good, I don't know what to tell you, man. You just don't believe that like people deserve to be treated equally.
But not everyone is falling for this, thankfully. In fact, black conservatives actually called out Charlie Kirk specifically because of his attacks on MLK Jr., which we did not get to yet in this video, but if you missed it, here's what he said. Wired continues, in 2015, Kirk called MLK Jr. a hero. In 2022, MLK was a civil rights icon, but in December of 2023, speaking before a group of students and teachers at America Fest, a political convention organized by Turning Point USA, Kirk struck a different tone. Quote, MLK was awful, Kirk said. He's not a good person. He said one good thing he actually didn't believe. Interesting. Now, in the same episode where he came out as a racist during his screed about black pilots, he addressed criticisms that he received from black conservatives over those comments about MLK Jr. So he is going to respond, and he's going to dictate not only what black role models black Americans should be allowed to have, but also basically tell the people who criticized him, who are black conservatives, by the way, so you think they're allies, he's basically going to tell them to fuck off. Let's watch.
Frederick Douglass, Ben Carson, Thomas Sowell, and Justice Clarence Thomas are far better black role models to celebrate than Martin Luther King, period. There's so much more here, but I just want to kind of just read some of this here. And one of my favorite, I mean, I chuckle at this. This guy, Armstrong Williams, who I like, and he's a friend. He could have called me or emailed me, but he's afraid to call me or email me because I wouldn't put up with it. So instead, he just writes the article and then hides behind it. Quote, Kirk's assault on Dr. King is as farcical, is that how you say it?
Farcical. Yeah.
Not a word I use. As would a middle school student's critique of Albert Einstein's theories, as ludicrous as Pontius Pilate's declaiming against Jesus' Sermon on the Mount. Oh, so questioning MLK is challenging the laws of physics and Jesus Christ.
What's great is it actually supports what we said, which is he's become a Christ-like figure in America. We pick dangerous fights.
It's so funny. It's like people say, "Oh no, he's not a Christ-like figure." By the way, going after him, you might as well attack Jesus. Like, whoa, which is it? And mind you, not a single one of these articles by this other guy I've never heard of, Delano Squires. The Blaze attacked me. I don't know why the Blaze is attacking me. Would love an explanation for that. Why they're writing articles against us. Anyway, it really ticks me off. And so, yeah, he writes this, Martin Luther King versus Charlie Kirk and the irreverent right. And this is he says, quote, conservatives claim that the history of slavery in America should not be judged by today's moral standards. This guy's such a moron.
This is a dumb argument.
This is really dumb. Yet they blame Dr. King, quote, for ideas they find objectionable today more than 50 years after he was assassinated. Wait a second.
So black conservatives are basically saying, hey, man, maybe pump the brakes on the racism. You're getting a little bit too explicit. And he basically says, shut the fuck up. It's not racist because I say so. You know, I'm really relieved that he chose to play the DEI card. Otherwise, I would be forced to assume that maybe he's a little bit racist. Now, on a serious note, Charlie Kirk isn't some random dickhead with a podcast. He actually has a lot of power and is an influence peddler within the Republican Party. And as Patriot Takes points out, none of the prominent conservatives associated with him have condemned him. But not all hope is lost, because I did find at least one example of a conservative condemning his blatant racism. Christopher Tremogli of the Washington Examiner, a conservative publication, by the way, actually denounced him and called out the conservatives who defended him, not by name, of course, but just kind of like referenced people who defended him. And he said that this line of thinking is wrong and it's not going to win over anybody with that argument, even though, like Kirk, he also is against DEI. So, I mean, there's one, I guess, but for the most part, conservatives agree with this. We can't pretend as if hysteria over DEI is just the Charlie Kirk thing. He might be the most blatant in his racism, but it's not just Charlie Kirk. As Amisha Clark of the Daily Beast explains, Elon Musk, the CEO of a car company whose vehicles have a tendency to catch fire, tweeted, "It will take an airplane crashing and killing hundreds of people for them to change this crazy policy of DIE. The obvious innuendo is that black people are responsible for Boeing's failures." Musk has also referred to DEI as, quote, just another word for racism. And I bet the left is going to call Elon Musk racist too for saying that. Everyone's racist according to the left. This is an Orwellian trick that they're doing. They're saying policies to address racism are actually racist. Also, war is peace, freedom is slavery.
Yeah. If airlines hire incompetent people, that's the certification board's fault. We should always assume that the certification is proof alone that pilots are competent. Most failures are due to malfunction, since 90% of flights are automated. Yep. If these dudes let themselves get any more fragile, they might shatter just taking a breath one day.
And ignorance is strength. But Amisha is going to explain that the right's newfound hatred of DEI is literally just racism, period. She continues, as of this week, Florida's 28 public colleges are prohibited from using government funds for diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. And because everything's bigger in the Lone Star State, Texas boasts 30 new anti-DEI laws. 13 states' attorneys general signed a public letter in July 2023 after the fall of affirmative action in college admissions. The letter had nothing to do with college admissions, but the Republican AGs used the Supreme Court decision as a platform to directly voice their collective opposition to DEI in the workforce. These efforts don't even scratch the surface of the anti-DEI architect's ultimate goal, stratifying the American workforce and reducing access to the C-suite, STEM careers, small businesses, and opportunities previously afforded almost solely to white men. America is more diverse today than it has ever been, and the fix is in to ensure diversity isn't reflected in high-paying jobs, the highest levels of government, or leadership in America's top educational institutions. To be black in America is to live in a constant threat of attack on your civil rights and humanity, the questioning of your abilities, and a belief that you are unworthy solely because of the color of your skin. Regardless of how often Nikki Haley says America isn't a racist country, the red, white, and blue time and again finds itself painfully erecting barriers to black achievement, health access, and any marker of equity. And she is absolutely correct. DEI is an attempt to unrig the economy, not rig it. And the goal here is to disentangle white supremacy from our institutions. And opposition to that is nothing more than a thinly veiled attempt to uphold the white supremacist status quo that benefits them and exclusively them. And if they were alive in the 1950s, I genuinely believe that they would be defending Jim Crow. If they were alive in the 1800s, I think they would actually be defending slavery. That's who these people are. When people tell you who they are, we should believe them. So make no mistake about it. These conservatives are racist. Full stop. There's no debate about that. What Charlie Kirk said is quintessential racism, and anyone who tries to pretend as if that's not the case, they're also racist too.
True. It's what approved for flight, not necessarily a person doing the maintenance. So you're saying that the engineers are at fault? Sometimes. Scrum Bucket. Thank you for the follow. It depends, but largely it's not the pilot's fault for the crash. Most crashes are plane malfunctions. Yep. All right, folks. Let's take a look here.
They're in front of my house. They're in front of.
Here we have Nancy Pelosi. A plane cockpits have many gauges and buttons, and autopilot and air traffic control black boxes have safety features. Yeah, but the point being is that like a lot of these issues are something going wrong versus malfunctions, or versus like the pilot. Oh look, it's a swamp monster. Yeah. Here we have Nancy Pelosi. Saying that apparently pro-Palestine Anyways, apparently protesting and calling for a ceasefire is a Russian op. No, I'm not kidding. Apparently, asking for a ceasefire is exactly what, quote, Mr. Putin wants. Don't believe me? Let's listen.
In my house all the time. So I have a feeling for what feelings they have. But we have to think about what we're doing. And what we have to do is try to stop the suffering in Gaza. This is women and children, people who don't have a place to go. So let's address that. But for them to call for a ceasefire is Mr. Putin's message. Mr. Putin's message. Make no mistake, this is directly connected to what he would like to see. Same thing with Ukraine. It's about Putin's message. I think some of these protesters are spontaneous and organic and sincere. Some, I think, are connected to Russia. And I say that having looked at this for a long time now. As you know,
think some of these protests are Russian plants?
These are plants. I think some financing should be investigated. And I want to ask the FBI to investigate that.
Yeah, so she's calling for the FBI to investigate people for apparently being a Russian op. Apparently. I mean, like, if this is how, you know, if this is like where we're at, where apparently protesting and calling for a ceasefire after what, 26,000 people have died at this point? 26,000 people have died is pretty freaking disgusting to say that, like, this is the conclusion that you arrived at.
They're in front of my house all the time. So I have a feeling for...
And, like, the initial statement that she says is that they're in front of her house all the time. That means that there's people protesting and calling for a ceasefire. And that's just, you know, that's just very pesky. So I guess we have to, you know, turn the authorities on these people. I mean, this is delusional. This is like, this is a supposed ex-democratic leader. Supposedly an ex-democratic leader. Or I should say, the ex-speaker. Because I think she's still in Congress, is she not? Or is she done? Nancy Pelosi. Yeah, I think she's still a representative. Very cool Democratic Party we have. I mean, like, if this is like the type of attitude, if this is like the type of attitude that the Democratic Party is going to adopt, I can assure you that it's not going to end well. Okay? I do read a lot of Dostoevsky. I'll be honest, I have no idea who that is. Was he like a... Is it this person? Fyodor? Fyodor I'm not even gonna pretend I know how to pronounce that. Fyodor Dostoevsky? A Russian writer. Yeah, that's what I gathered from the quick Google. But unfortunately, I don't know much other than he was a novelist and short story. Crime and Punishment? I have not read that. I was an English major. Gotcha. He's very Russian in a good way. That's cool. All right, switching gears really quickly. Michigan and Ohio Republicans are heard stating that the endgame for anti-trans legislation is to ban trans care for everyone. They discussed exactly how they plan to do it piece by piece and incrementally, which is no surprise. No surprise at all.
Kuntz, Senator Lindsay as well on board. You guys can jump in, just unmute your mic anytime you want if you got questions for Rep Click or pre-show or comments or otherwise. By all means, jump in there if you guys have anything. And obviously Senator Tice too. Obviously you've got a lot about this too, which I respect so much from the Senate side. I'm grateful for you being here.
My whole thing is in terms of endgame, why are we allowing these practices for anyone? You know, why would we stop this for anyone under 18, but not apply this for anyone over 18? It's harmful across the board, and I think that's something that we need to take into consideration in terms of the end game.
Rep Shriver, that's very smart thought there. And I think sometimes what we know legislatively is we have to take sometimes small bites. And I think the thing that we can...
Yeah, and they learned this. They learned this from Roe, right? They learned this from Roe. You can't just go out swinging to try to ban abortion outright. You start with small things, and then when the time is right, then you swing the hammer down. NOK Life, thank you for the follow. I feel like I've seen your username somewhere. I mean, we all knew banning trans care was the goal. The Republicans literally are the slippery slope fallacy proved correct. Yeah, the unfallacious slippery slope. They start with, oh, I just want this little thing and keep on going until they chip away at our freedoms completely. The Nazis did it. It's called appeasement. Yeah. The whole point is exactly that. Yeah, if a ideology or party or whatever is completely okay with taking away bodily autonomy, what's then from a certain group of people bodily autonomy to choose what to do with your body in terms of abortion? What makes you think that they're not comfortable taking away your rights to trans care, whatever, anything? It won't stop at just abortion. It was never going to stop at just abortion. It was never going to stop at, oh, we just want to protect the kids. Oh, we just want to ban trans care for kids. It was never going to end there.
Can say is for minors is that they are not capable of providing informed consent. We already regulate what minors can do, but they cannot do. They cannot sign contracts. They cannot buy cigarettes. They cannot, consume alcohol. They can't get a tattoo without their parents. We already have some rules regarding that. For minors, the prefrontal cortex is not yet developed. And in fact, that doesn't really develop to the age of 24. So I think there is something to be said for adults being able to weigh the pros and the cons. One of the things the governor did here, he made several mistakes, but one of the things he did do correctly is he actually put back in a couple of things that I had to negotiate out, which one was getting the data. There is no requirements to report the data. I had that in there. It got negotiated out. He actually put that back in, which was a good thing. And then The other thing was, the Planned Parenthoods, they pass out, hormones like candy. And so he's put a stop to that.
Yeah. Okay. Mouselander, welcome. Thank you for the movie on Saturday. No problem. Yeah, of all the things that don't happen, this one didn't happen the most.
And that's where a lot of the adults will go. There's also places like Euphoria and Plume where you can get your letters and you can get your hormones online through an app. Those are some things that we need to, at least slow down the game. Most people, if they take their time, they won't do this. We know that puberty is the natural cure for this. 85 to 95% of kids.
What? How do you know that? Like, that's completely against, like, everything we know. Okay? That's delusional. Like, if the left pushed even half as hard as the right does for things, we could slowly inch towards favorable things for this nation. Yeah. I think, like, it's not a lot, but I think that one of the problems is that every time we bring something up, it's always an issue. Every time, like, oh, you want universal healthcare? Pfft, what are you, a bunch of children that just want, like, free stuff? Like, every time, like, oh, we should push for, I don't know, universal college. Oh, pfft, you silly children. You have no idea how, like, any of this works. Like, and after a while, like, it just builds this level of apathy to the point where, like, even very left people just accept the fact that, like, we're just not going to be taken. Any of our considerations aren't even going to be taken. And there have been instances where we have made ground. It's just not as much.
Who genuinely have gender dysphoria will desist after they go through puberty. But when you put them on puberty blockers, 98% of them will persist and they'll go on to the opposite sex hormones and to the dangerous things.
But like you just said that, or your colleagues just say that you need to ban it for adults too. So why even have this conversation? This doesn't make any sense. You're saying that there shouldn't be any access to healthcare for trans kids. And then you're saying that there shouldn't be any access to trans care for adults. And your justification is what? That, like, the cure is going to be them going through puberty? This makes no sense.
So that is not a neutral intervention. It is not a pause button like they say. You are actually affecting the child's mind when you do that, not to mention all the complications that Prisha has gone through and that she's mentioned. Let me add this in too. I got this from Lior Sapir, someone you ought to follow from the Manhattan Institute. And the arguments that they're going to come at you with are going to be based on eminence, not evidence. Eminence, not evidence. And so that means because we say so, not because it is so. So they're going to quote to you every organization that supports it, the AFA, the APA.
But wait, the organizations that we're quoting are not just random organizations, dude. These are like the sources to go to. Like, I can't talk to you about, like, the climate crisis and then I start talking about, like, all the evidence provided by the people who study this, like climate scientists and whatever, and then you just go like, well, this isn't evidence, it's eminence because you say so. Like, no, it's not because I say so. It's because I have this opinion that's backed up by the people who study this stuff. The same goes here. Like these organizations are medical organizations. Like it would be the people to go to when you would want an opinion on this. Yeah, it's what he's doing. He's saying that they don't have to provide evidence. They say so. It's they completely contradict themselves, and it's no evidence needed.
All these different groups, all these different medical associations who say gender affirming care is good. You say that's great. Where's the evidence? Where's their science?
There is science. That's how they arrived at that conclusion. Did you think that like these medical organizations just made that up? There are studies behind the consensus that the medical organizations reached. It didn't just come out of thin air.
And they don't have it. They don't have it whatsoever. They can't give you any long-term studies of high quality because they don't exist. And the ones that do exist support what we say. And so you have to remind them, well, because you said so is not good enough. They block, the APA blocked the pediatricians who had a call to restudy.
Most of the GOP would vote for Putin before voting for Biden. Yeah, I mean, didn't we see like, I don't know if it was last election, but a while ago, I think it was the 2016 election. It said something to the effect of like, I'd rather be a Russian than a Democrat or something like that. Anyways, the point being is that these people are serious, and the game plan that they have is has been proven, and they're willing, like NOK Life said, they're willing to put the fight in. And they have seen success. They have seen success. And this is not going to stop. They're not going to stop. They're not going to stop at just... they're not going to stop at just banning trans care for children. They're not going to... Like, they wouldn't stop... pushing for abortion bans at, X amount of weeks, or, oh, no, it won't be completely banned. We'll just put exceptions, or, oh, it will only be from 12 weeks and over. Like, this was never, it was never that end game. That was never the end game. The same thing with anti-trans legislation. Okay? It's not going to stop at kids. It's not about protecting the children. It's just not. It's just about erasing trans people. At the end of the day, that's really what it is. Biden is really America's candidate. He's pro-big business, anti-union, built a border wall, struck an immigration deal to have other countries take immigrants before we do, reclassified Venezuela as a refugee status, separate families at the border, etc. The Democrats are the most successful conservative party in America. Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that. We'll get to that. Peter Navarro, ex-Trump official, sentenced. Yeah, I forgot the genocide he's helping to bankroll. Yeah. And apparently, protesting said genocide and asking for a ceasefire apparently is a Russian op, and that people asking for a ceasefire should be investigated. Apparently that's what we're going with. Peter Navarro, ex-Trump official, sentenced to 4 months in prison for contempt of Congress. A Peter Navarro, former trade official in the Trump White House, was sentenced to 4 months in prison on Thursday on 2 contempt of Congress charges stemming from his refusal to comply with the subpoena related to his actions on the 2020 election. In 2022, Navarro defied a demand for records and testimony from the now-defunct House Select Committee tasked with investigating the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. A federal jury in Washington convicted Navarro after a short trial in September of 23. Judge Amit Mehta, who imposed a sentence after a hearing in federal court, also fined Navarro $9,500. The sentence was less strict than the 6 months in prison and $600,000 fine that prosecutors had requested. He will not report directly to prison, as his attorneys argued that he should be released as they pursue an appeal for his conviction. They quickly filed a notice that would ask an appeals court to review the case. Navarro spoke briefly during Thursday's hearing, thanking his lawyers and the judge. When I received the congressional subpoena, I had an honest belief that the executive privilege had been invoked. He said, defying his attorney's advice that he's not speak on his own behalf. Yeah. Though I had a video saying Nancy and AOC flubbed the Palestine question, I didn't watch what AOC said, though. I didn't either, to be honest. I'm gonna be honest. Hold on, folks. Off-topic question. How do you feel about Ro Khanna as a possible savior for the Democratic voters in 2028? I guess better than what we've had. In comparison? I mean, after all of this, I mean, in comparison, like, I'd be, at least for the Democratic Party, it'd be more welcomed than, you know, the continued status quo. Could be worse. Yeah, I suppose so. Could be worse. In February of 2022, congressional investigators were interested in Navarro's efforts to formulate a plan to delay the certification of the 2020 presidential election result from his post in the Trump White House. The January 6th committee issued a subpoena seeking records and testimony, with its chair saying Chairman saying Navarro appears to have information directly relevant to the Select Committee's investigation. Navarro refused to comply, claiming that former President Trump had asserted executive privilege over the material sought by the committee. President Biden and the White House counsel office declined to invoke that privilege to shield Navarro from the congressional subpoena. The House, controlled by Democrats, voted to hold him in contempt and deferred the matter to the Justice Department. The U.S. Attorney in Washington then criminally charged him with 2 counts of contempt. Prosecutors allegedly during the one-day trial last year, that Navarro acted like he was above the law when he did not comply with the committee's request. His attorneys unsuccessfully urged Mehta, the judge, to allow Navarro to argue that Trump instructed him to assert executive privilege and deny the congressional request. Right, because like that would not make sense if the Biden administration said they weren't going to allow that to happen. So at the end of the day, this is his result. This is his reward, I guess. Cornel West, I just don't think they have a chance. So I would appreciate a Ro Khanna run in 2028. I mean, I wouldn't even be opposed to that. as like in comparison to like what we've seen from the Democratic Party, you know, Trump calls the UAW president a dope after union endorses Biden. Yeah. Former President Trump took a swipe at the UAW president on Sunday. The man himself, Sean Fain, calling him a dope after the UAW endorsed President Biden. In a social media post on Sunday, Trump called for the removal of the UAW president, Sean Fain, after the union leader appeared on CBS Face the Nation to tout Biden's support to the UAW's efforts. Sean Fain doesn't understand this or have a clue, said Trump. Get rid of this dope and vote for Donald J. Trump. Hey, you know, the best way to earn votes from union is to make sure that you trash the very leader that just made a massive successful strike to earn contracts for the workers that voted him in. That makes perfect sense. You make sure to insult that leader who just did a phenomenal job. Get rid of this dope and vote for Donald J. Trump. I will bring the automobile industry back to the country. Which, yeah. That sounds like a threat. Yeah, it definitely does. In terms of like, it definitely does. Like, Sean Fain should really respond to this and say, you know, you know what? If Trump gets into power, we'll do a strike or something. The UAW didn't immediately respond for comment. The UAW formally endorsed Biden last week, with Fain stating this choice is clear. Joe Biden bet on the American worker, while Trump blamed the American worker. Fain said Biden earned the endorsement. Biden said Biden made the unprecedented move at appearing on a UAW picket line during the union's 6-week strike against the Detroit automakers. On the night of the second Republican primary debate, Trump gave a speech to current and former members of the Auto Workers Union on the 13th day of their strike. The event was held at a non-unionized auto parts supplier, which, that seemed like a dog and pony show, you know. On CBS Face the Nation, Fain said that he can't fathom any union supporting Trump. Trump is scheduled to meet with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, President Sean O'Brien, and union members next week, as the union has yet to endorse a presidential candidate. Donald Trump has a history of serving himself and standing up for the billionaire class, and that's contrary to everything that working class people stand for. I mean, like, unfortunately, like, Biden isn't, like, the biggest friend to the working class either. That's the issue, ultimately. But hey, you know, if you want to win votes, I guess, insult the president and the leader that got you historic contract deals. Yeah, that'll work out for you. I mean, like, this, if anything, puts out on the open just how much Donald Trump loathes the working class. Hi, Carlos. I know this is uncomfortable for you, but I think we have to admit there's only one political outcome in the elections for you, and for me, for a while, and most everyone else, it can only be Democrats because they're the only choice available. Yeah, but also, like, they don't inspire a whole lot. of confidence. And I think after a certain point, either the Democrats are going to have to understand that they need to reach out to people, or they're just going to lose. And it's not our responsibility to go get votes for them. It's not our responsibility to vote for them. It's their responsibility to go out and get votes, not us. Because if that's the only thing that we're being offered here, it's just not enough. It's just not enough. After, enough is enough. Either you earn our votes or you don't. Either you want to win elections or you don't. I think we're in the least worst situation, and we shouldn't go with Trump and MAGA. Nobody here is going to just vote for MAGA. The problem is they're not the Democratic Party is not inspiring people to go out and vote for them. I can assure you that nobody here is going to go vote for Trump. That's not the issue. We already know that. We already know that the Republican Party is incredibly dangerous. We already know that they're a fascist party. The issue is, can the Democratic Party give us something to make us go vote for them? It is not our responsibility to do that. If they want our votes, then they need to go out and do what it is they need to do to earn people's votes. And it's quite clear what they need to do that. It's not a mystery. It's not this unsolvable puzzle. It's actually quite clear. Trump, who owes $88 million to Jim Crow insulting union presidents, can't keep quiet. Well, if you don't vote for MAGA, you best hold your nose, vote them, and keep MAGA out. Or the Dems could, I don't know, inspire me to go vote for them. Make me go out and vote for them. And give me a reason. Give me a reason. Because that's not enough. We already know that, the Republicans are bad. And if the Democratic Party can't be bothered to put up a good reason to vote for them, people are just going to stay home. What more inspiration do you need than not getting MAGA in next time? I need policy concessions, okay? Like, what are you going to do for me? Okay? What are you going to do for me? What are you going to do for me? Remember, politicians work for us, right? Politicians are supposed to be elected representatives. So, represent. I think my pragmatism wins out. I think that enough people are tired of it that they're going to stay home. Okay? You know what pragmatism is? Giving people a reason to vote for. That's pragmatism. You want pragmatism? Start doing shit that inspire people to vote, to go out and vote for you. That's pragmatism. I have no doubt that the GOP is 80% responsible for the mess we're in. The Dems have just taken their place, and the GOP have moved on to fascism and beat the Dems. Well, yeah, because liberals are incapable of dealing with fascism. That's the problem. That's the problem. When it comes to fascism, liberals are asleep at the wheel. They're just not capable. And every time it just clicks. The ratchet clicks, and it keeps clicking. And at some point, enough is enough. Like, if the party isn't responding, to If the party isn't responding to the constituency, then what is the point? Okay? Do you understand what the issue is here? There's less than a year left to the election. Right now, the Dems are trying to expand presidential authority to shut down the border. Yeah, we're getting to that. Yes, NOK Life and the Simulacra. Yeah, we're gonna tie a nice little neat bow around this whole thing. About why this is problematic. And again, if you want to win, then, you know, give your base what it wants. If you want to win, give your base what it wants. And if you can't be bothered to go out and earn those votes, then why are you there? Does that make sense?
So the role of the Democrats in the current system is to intentionally lose. I hope you'll let me explain, because as we navigate the tricky intersectional ethics of the upcoming 2024 election and beyond, it's important that we begin to understand this in our bones. 50 years ago, the U.S. had two political parties, Republicans and Democrats, and both had genuine public support, and both platforms held some public appeal. And then the right wing realized that there was unimaginable money to be made from corporate campaign funding. So they abandoned their entire platform and dedicated themselves completely to allowing the exploitation of the environment and the working class to give every single penny to the ultra-rich. Paid really well, but there was no way they were going to win elections with that as a platform, because it amounted to a giant middle finger to the working class and their voter base. So they needed to mobilize a new voter base. They looked at a few options and settled on evangelical fundamentalist Christians who were previously pretty apolitical. In order to buy their votes, the Republican Party turned on a dime in the 1980s and became rabidly pro-life. Before this, the Republicans were openly pro-choice because abortion is a personal right, and they were the party advocating personal rights. This marked the start of the modern culture wars, where the right invents boogeymen to terrify their base into ignoring the fact that their entire platform is basically steal all your money and give it to the rich, while destroying the environment we live in. The Democrats quickly followed suit, starting with Clinton. They also abandoned any actual representation of their base for corporate cash grabs, including massively lucrative arms deals and warmongering in order to funnel billions through the Pentagon into their
True. Damn.
corporate funders' pockets. So the only two major political parties in the most powerful country in the history of the world both completely sold out to corporate interests some 30 to 40 years ago, which has led to an ever-widening gap between public opinion and legislation. For example, polling shows that some 70% of Americans have wanted some form of universal health care for decades, but it's barred from even being seriously discussed. Citizens of the U.S. are shockingly aligned on most major issues. We all want the rich to pay taxes, not to watch our neighbors and families die from easily preventable medical issues, living wages, fair elections, breathable air, and not bombing of babies. Corporations want the exact opposite, or more accurately, they want the record-breaking profits they can extract from the opposite. This creates a real quandary for both Republicans and Democrats alike. How do you continue to get votes while aggressively working against everything your voters want? You already know the answer. They stage a farce where they pretend to be bitter enemies, and like any abuser, they both claim that they are the only ones who can keep you safe from the other. The Republicans pretend that they are the only thing preventing straight white Christians from being hunted for sport by hordes of black and brown trans drug dealers screaming pronouns and making up new genders. The Democrats pretend that they are the only ones who can save you from the coal-guzzling fascists literally storming the Capitol. The fact that one boogeyman is totally fictional and the other is very real doesn't change their tactical exploitation and the presentation of themselves as your only hope at all. And they've gotten really good at this dance. They do a great job at it now. They look genuinely enraged at each other as they denounce the other side of the aisle, while all of them vote unanimously for the same tax cuts for the rich and bloated military budgets and genocides that line their funders.
Yeah, this is 100% true. If you want to roadblock MAGA, then Dems are the only answer at the moment. But, like, I'll get to it. And then you're going to have to explain. The difference to me.
Funders' pockets. The Republicans have it easy. Their platform of culture war has no relationship to their corporate funders, so when they get into office, they can do most of what they say they will. They'll criminalize abortion, defund social services, cut taxes, but only on the rich, never for you, institute a brutal police state, terrorize immigrants and LGBTQ people. The Democrats have a real problem, though. Their nominal platform is at odds with their corporate sponsors, so they do the only logical thing from that position. They intentionally lose. Every time they make a catch, win an election, they intentionally fumble the ball. We're all so used to seeing this farcical dance that we can't even really register it anymore, but the Democrats have had the Senate, House, and presidency simultaneously multiple times in the last few decades. At any one of those times, they could have actually made change. They could have codified Roe versus Wade. They could have passed legislation eliminating all student debt. They could have cut military spending, taxed the rich, passed universal health care. They could have capped emissions and maintained a livable environment. Our country and world could be very, very different than it is. It really doesn't have to be like this. But if they did those things, they would then gain massive public support and actually run the country, but they would lose lose all their corporate funding. So that's not actually what they want. So they keep this incredibly fragile balance, where since the Clinton years, where the Democrats sold out, the balance of power has been carefully maintained at almost exactly 50-50, giving both parties the ability to point the finger and blame the other for not getting anything done. It didn't used to be like that. The party that better represented the will of the population used to just win and then do what the people wanted. Like the 75th Congress, some 90 years ago, was 344 to 88. Because the Democrats, who held the 344, maintained a 95% tax on the rich and actually subsidized social services and education. If today's Democrats simply adopted the platform of their own party from 90 years ago, they would win every election in a landslide. But they actively don't want to win. For many of us millennials, this was really driven home by the 2016 election cycle. Polls were crystal clear. In every single poll, Bernie Sanders beat Trump by double digits and Hillary Clinton lost to Trump. The DNC pulled out all the stops. They lied, cheated, stole so much in order to force Sanders out and put Clinton up as the candidate that it was impossible not to see it. It looked insane to many of us. We felt crazy. I remember literally watching them kick Sanders delegates out for asking questions that they didn't want to answer at the Democratic National Convention in Maine.
I remember when they were pretending like they were going to reinstate the Voting Rights Act. There'd be no incentives for listing the military. It'd be great if multiple parties got even 45% of the ballot, no electoral college, barely ranked church voting, and definitely no other parties in Congress or only 2 independents. Yeah, I mean, like, it's not even just like, at this point, yeah, sure, multi-parties would be, I think, better in a sense as far as, like, political representation. But the point here is, like, the Democrats are lacking. And the argument being put forth here is that it's on purpose. Because at the end of the day, politicians, Democrats included, are bought and paid for because, well, capital is what really runs this place.
I remember watching them shut down polling places where Sanders had strong leads. All the things that the MAGA thinks happened in the 2020 election, the DNC literally did and didn't even bother to hide in 2016. They were taken to court for it, and they didn't even deny that they rigged the primary. They just said, hey, we're a private company. We're under zero obligation to run fair elections. We can nominate whoever we want. The voting is just a farce. That was their legal argument, and they won with it. I remember hearing people scream at the DNC officials, do you want to lose? And slowly understanding that, yeah, that was exactly what they wanted. They would literally rather lose with Clinton than win with Sanders. Because when they lose, they can then say, gosh darn it, we tried, but they won this round. Please donate more. They get to look like the good guys who keep trying but just keep getting beaten down by the forces of fascism and racism and hate. As losers, they're noble victims. But when they win, they have real problems like what we're seeing now with Biden, where they have to try and hide the fact that they are also the forces of fascism and racism and hate. If Trump had won, he'd likely be doing the exact same thing, but it would be normal. We'd all expect it, and the DNC would fundraise like crazy. When a Democrat commits genocide, though, we're supposed to see it as atypical. Unflinchingly committing genocide is supposed to read as, oh, a little oopsie from an otherwise ethical humanitarian Democratic leader. The fact that the Republican platform doesn't interfere with their corporate interests and therefore they can enact the policies they promise to, while the Democrats have to constantly appear to fumble and fail in their oh-so-genuine efforts to create change, has, of course, led to the rightward drift of U.S. politics over the last decades, to the point where Republican elected officials are now openly saying out loud that we should kill all Palestinians, while the House just voted near unanimously that anyone who says we should not commit genocide must be anti-Semitic. That shift is noteworthy. If any politician had stood up and publicly said that we should kill all of a given race 50 years ago, they would have rightfully been called a Nazi and lost all public credulity. Today, that's accepted on the floor of a state house, while opposing genocide is condemned and literally censured. That's pretty intense, and it's like that across the board. The only thing that matters in political discourse is controlling the parameters of the narrative. What is outside the bounds on each side? If you control these two bookends, then the content of what is said in between them becomes wholly irrelevant. Both bookends have been steadily shifting to the right for a long time, to the point where now right-wing politicians openly advocate ethnic cleansing, and left-wing politicians just quietly fund ethnic cleansing. And anything to the left of funding ethnic cleansing is literally censured. Remember how 100 years ago the Democrats controlled like 80% of Congress and they taxed the rich at 95% in a way that gave the U.S. the strongest economy in the history of the world? Now, if any elected official is crazy enough to suggest that the rich should pay any taxes at all, they're labeled as communists and laughed out of the room. So I paid more taxes than Jeff Bezos last year. The cost of living's through the roof, federal minimum wage is still $7.25, and we're watching our tax dollars bomb babies. But the Democrats, who are currently the ones bombing babies, are our saviors. And if we just vote for them a little bit more, then they'll save us all. Most notable in all of this is that if anyone speaks up who actually represents the will of the American people, they're mocked and driven out of the conversation. So people like Claudia de la Cruz or Cornel West are effectively barred from any presence in the mainstream media, or if they are covered, it's as an anomaly and immediately condemned as stealing votes from the real candidates. Notice that framing. It's not that Biden or Trump are losing through their complete failure to represent anything like what the people want. It's that anyone who represents what the people want is stealing votes from them. If you'd like to understand the mechanisms and expressions of this political narrative of control better, I can't recommend Chomsky enough. Since reading his master work, Manufacturing Consent, a Propaganda Model of the Media, I have never seen the world the same way. That book is dense, but he covers the same content in a much more digestible fashion in the 1988 CBC Massey lectures titled Necessary Illusions, which is also in print as a book by the same name. But that's a 4-hour lecture set from 35 years ago, and it's worth every second. But don't take my word for it. Just watch and look at the track record. If the Democrats wanted to win, they'd do what 75% of the country wants and stop funding genocide and enact a ceasefire. But they're doing the exact opposite, and it may very well have the effect of putting Trump back into office. As you watch that play out, or whatever the next scenario is where the Democrats fail or look wildly inept, just remember this video and compare what you're seeing to the idea that they want to lose. If they wanted to win, we all know how they could. They're not doing that. So ask yourself what priorities would lead to their actual ineffective course of action, and whether those priorities align with yours, your neighbors, and those of everyone who wants a safe, livable world.
True. Biden offers fresh assurance that he would shut down the border right now if Congress just sends him a deal. I mean, like, if you heard, like, never mind, like, don't even like imagine Biden. Like, if you heard, if Congress, hold on, I don't think I'm doing it right. If Congress would just do their jobs and send me a bill, I would shut down the border immediately. Okay, Congress needs to do that. Republicans in Congress need to get together, and the Dems need to pass this law so that I can shut down the border immediately, okay? I mean, like, people would be like, oh, wow, dude, that sounds like Trump. Wow, that sounds like a perfect line from Trump, right? That sounds like a perfect, like, I could even do it in his mocking voice, but it could perfectly be a stand-in for something that Trump would literally ask for. Yeah, I make the best deals, and I think that this deal is good. If Congress would just do their job and send me the bill, I would shut down the border right now. I would shut down the border the moment the bill hits my desk. I mean, like, let's be honest with ourselves. Does that not sound exactly like Trump? The answer to that, objectively, is yes. Biden offers fresh assurances, not just like a fluke, okay? This wasn't a fluke. This wasn't a mistake. This is doubling down. Fresh assurances that he would shut down the border right now if Congress sends him a deal. South Carolina, Biden bidding to salvage a border deal in Congress that would also unlock money for Ukraine. President Biden offered fresh assurances on Saturday that he would be willing to close the U.S.-Mexico border if lawmakers would only send him a bill to sign. Mind you, the Republicans aren't going to do this, okay? They manufactured this to begin with. They manufactured this crutch to hit him with it. Biden also eager to disarm GOP criticisms for handling the migration at the border. If it's true that the GOP and Republicans were so concerned about solving this problem, supposedly, about solving, the border crisis, if they're so adamant about solving the problem in the border crisis, then wouldn't they have already put forth the bill and called Biden out on it, on its bluff? No. Mitch McConnell said, we're not doing this. It's a farce. $60 billion in Ukraine and the border bill. NBC News reports 1 hour past, lawmakers press Biden to get Congress approval for Middle East strikes. Yeah, well, that's a whole other problem. That he would set at a political event in South Carolina, that he would shut down the border right now if Congress passed the proposed deal. The framework hasn't been formally agreed to by Senate Democrats and Republicans, and it would face an uncertain future in the GOP-controlled House because, again, they're not interested in solving a farcical problem that they made up to begin with. Cars, which is worse, America having an open border or completely closed border? It's a farce. It's a fake problem. There's no such thing as an open border. If you were honest with yourself, well, I don't know, you're not from America, you're from the UK. But just to be clear, there's no open border. That's a farce. You are going along with the delusion. You are going along with the delusion. But the GOP will blame Biden either way. Exactly! So why would Biden go and say, like, well, you know what? I'm going to shut down the border. I'm going to completely shut it down. You're going to get blamed because that's the point. And now you're trying to talk like Trump. You're trying to talk like Trump, giving them what they want on a silver platter, in an effort to outflank them from the right. If I wanted right-wing policies, I would have voted for Trump. So I asked you, to your question, what would you rather have? I don't know, man. What does it look like from here? Yeah, what does completely closed border mean? I don't know. Give them what they want. That'll show them. Biden has already deported more people than Trump did in 4 years. Does the U.S. Senate have anything to vote on? I'm sure they do. That's not the issue. Is that the president, who's currently running, who's supposed to be the Democratic candidate, is literally talking like fucking Trump. That's the issue. We're in the Goldilocks situation with the border. Is that border too open or too closed? There's no such thing as an open border. It's a farce. It's a made up crisis. It's a made up crisis to clobber, supposedly to clobber the Democrats over, because of xenophobia. That's what it is. That's what this is all about. Giving into this is acknowledging the delusion. We don't need to be like talking about a fake problem. If you really believe that the problem is real, then like why are you playing footsies with it? Biden helps McCarthy get fired. Biden didn't do anything to get McCarthy fired. It was the Republicans. It was the far-right Republicans that fired McCarthy. Biden had nothing to do with that. You missed out just right? I have no idea what that means. A bipartisan bill would be good for America. A bipartisan bill that would give Republicans everything that they want would be good for America and help our broken immigration system and allow a speedy access for those who deserve to be here. If anybody read what this is actually about, nobody would believe this. This is a lie. It'll also give me as president the emergency authority to shut down the border until it could get back under control. If that bill were law today, I'd shut down the border right now and fix it quickly. That deal being negotiated in Congress would require the U.S. to shutter the border if roughly 5,000 migrants cross illegally on any given day. Some one-day totals exceed 10,000. Former President Trump had been pressuring Republicans for weeks to kill those negotiations. He'd loathe to give Biden a win on the issue that he supposedly is willing to fix, but apparently it's not a big problem enough for him to enter the negotiations. You know, Mike Johnson is about to join McCarthy. Maybe. Who knows? Johnson is a scary guy. He's loath to give Biden a win on an issue that animated Republicans' successful 2016 campaign and that he wants to use as he seeks to return to the White House. Negotiators had appeared to be closing in on a deal, but it started to fray after Trump admonitions to conservative lawmakers grew stronger. Why does Trump want a no deal unless it means bad news for Dems? Well, it's a fake problem, and he wants that fake problem to continue to be a fake problem so that he can attempt to ride that into the White House because of his xenophobic racist base. That's how this works. If he actually wanted to take care of the problem and he felt that it was a real problem, he would have pressured the Republicans to make the deal because it would close down the border because that's what they want. But it's actually not a problem because they don't want to fix it. It's a farce. Right, Trump wants the talking point, but instead we have Biden parroting the same talking point. This is delusional. In a written statement on Friday, Biden said that he would allow him that the deal would allow him new emergency authority to close the border. Also, why are we giving the president more power? You do know that there is a chance that Trump might win the election. Like, Biden doesn't have this on lock. It is quite possible that Biden loses the election. And you're just giving fresh new emergency authority to the incoming fascist government? Cool. That'll work. It was a stark claim from a Democratic president that was met with astonishment and shock from immigrant advocates who said that his policies do not reflect the progressive approach they had expected. Voters want to see our elected leaders do the hard work to fix our frayed immigration system, said Deirdre Schiffling, chief political and advocacy officer at the ACLU. President Biden and Congress must abandon these proposals and heed voters' demands for a fair and effective immigration policy that manages the border and treats people seeking safety with dignity. To speak out what Trump would actually do, he would actually do the same thing. I mean, like, fundamentally, there would be no difference. That's what Trump actually wants to do. Except Biden's now saying, like, I'm going to do it. Bro, if I wanted Trump, I would have voted for Trump. If I wanted Trumpian policies, I would have voted for Trump. I don't want Biden talking like Trump. I don't want Biden doing Trump shit. This is absurd because no Republican, no conservative is going to look at that and say, oh, you know what? I am now going to be voting for Biden. No conservative is going to look at this and vote for Biden. Okay? No conservative is going to be like, oh, well, Biden's stance on immigration really changed my mind. Why would I vote for Biden when I could have the real deal Daddy Trump as a conservative? Does that make sense? So there's no point in even engaging in this. And yet here we are. I kind of think he's calling their bluff. The GOP could take a win, but wants to LARP instead. Right, because the issue is not real. They can't. They can't. The issue isn't real. If they were genuine about this, they would actually do. They would actually go back and forth. And the thing is, like, if they do send a bill to his desk, he would send it. Like, because, you know, if he really thinks that this is a if he really thinks that this is some kind of bluff, he would just use an executive order, okay? He would just be like, you know what? You know what? I'm just gonna use an executive order and stop this right now. But instead, he's going the route that would solidify that as legislation. Why? I mean, it'll be an L for Republicans because they will have to admit Biden fixed the border. But not really. Not really. Do you think like Republicans are going to take this as an L? No. It's about perception. That's not how these people work. That's not how these people work. This is a perceived win for the Republican Party. This is a perceived win for a Republican Party, not the Democrats. They will look weak because they accepted the border proposal. They won't. It'll look like they closed the border. It would look like they strong-armed weak Joe Biden, who had the open borders. They strong-armed him into finally making the decision to close the border. It was us. It was us, the Republicans. You know, whatever. It's not going to matter. The reality, they can twist it, however it is that they need. A Biden AO would work. Yeah, he could totally do that. He can do an emergency declaration. He could do an emergency. He can do the emergency declaration just like Trump did. They don't know what to do about the border narrative. They have to invent another Texas secession. That's what fourth since 2000s. Oh, and also like on that note, by the way, this all stemmed down. Biden doesn't have the money. He absolutely can declare an emergency. And on that note, the only reason this all happened is because you're right. That Texas threatened sedition, and then Biden just says, no, I'll close the border. How does that look? How weak does that look? Especially after losing in the Supreme Court, that should have been the end of it. The moment Texas started to get all sedition-y, they should have federalized the National Guard and be done with that nonsense. So now, essentially, this is where all this is going to. The reason why we're talking about this. So now, basically, like anytime the far right wants something, they can just throw a fit. And the Democrats are nowhere to be found. Texas won't leave the union. It doesn't matter. They can threaten. They can threaten a secession. So the response should have been immediate and hard. There's no need. There's no need to take anything from these fascists. Aren't you calling for a dictatorship? Nope. The president's well within their power to nationalize the Guard. The president is well within their power to nationalize the National Guard. It's called the National Guard. They can't even if they wanted to. Doesn't matter. The point being is that, like, at any given point, they can just throw a fit, and the Democrats will just give them what they want. But you don't want a king? No, I want a leader who would look at fascists and say, nah, you're not going to throw a fit. Nationalizing the National Guard is not really an authoritarian move. Exactly. That's like saying, or aren't you calling for a dictatorship when the National Guard was nationalized to escort kids during segregation? Nobody would say that. The real concern is someone doing something during the LARP, then it gets real. Yeah, and the issue is it needed to be stamped out the moment Texas started throwing their little fit. The moment that Supreme Court ruling came down, and they didn't want to move for the federal government, the moment that Texas wanted to throw a fit and didn't want to move for the federal government who has the authority there, that's the moment that they should have nationalized the Guard at that point and say, no, we have the Supreme Court ruling to back this up. So you know what? We're nationalizing we're nationalizing the National Guard. Any other Republican governor that tries to do this nonsense, we'll nationalize that Guard too. Okay? Texas has threatened to leave before another, they have. All they have is projection and confession. Federalizing National Guard is effectively getting rid of it since it's state. Yeah, it would just fall under the authority of the federal government, like it's supposed to be, when it needs to be. Does that make sense? You live in a racist so-called democracy. What do you think the electorate would vote for? I have no idea what this is even trying to convey here. If I live in a racist democracy, how would that be a democracy? Explain that one. Originally wasn't, but I don't mind either way. Just because something was there for a long time doesn't mean it ought to be. Yeah, that's fair. And again, it's irrelevant because the federal government has the authority in that position to do and enact and enforce the immigration policy at the time. So the correct move was not to go ask the Republicans to send him a bill so he could shut down the border. Okay? The move was, hey, what are you talking about? I'm nationalizing this Guard right now. Go F yourselves. Erica Mana, thank you for the follow. Game Boy 64, thank you for the follow. Did you see how we possibly found Amelia Earhart's plane? But it will take up to a year to find out. Yeah, I did see a headline about that. But like you said, we just don't know 100%, but it's possible. I guess one day we'll know. But Biden's struggling across multiple fronts, dealing with an influx of asylum seekers, even as he cracks down on those who crossed into the country illegally. Democrats are increasingly frustrated because asylum seekers are streaming into cities that lack the resources to care for them. In the letter Saturday, responding to Biden's comment, House Speaker Mike Johnson insisted that Biden doesn't need congressional action to close the border and call on him to take executive action immediately to reverse the catastrophe he has created. Which, how does that work? If the policies in terms of immigration haven't really much changed, could I say that the same thing? Would they say that Trump caused this catastrophe? No, Trump was strong on the border. You see, Trump was strong on the border, because he talked like it. Biden does mostly the same policy. Weak on the border. Open border. Totally open border. Immigration remains a major concern for voters in 2024. An AP NORC poll earlier this month found that those voicing concerns about immigration climbed to 35% from 27% last year. Most Republicans, 55%, say the federal government needs to focus on immigration in 2024, while 22% say the Democrats listed immigration. While 22% of Democrats listed immigration as a priority, that's up from 45 and 14%, respectively, in 2022. Arrests for illegal border crossings reached an all-time high in December since monthly numbers have been released. Hey, that's interesting. If 22%, or another way of putting it, if 78% of your electorate, the people that are going to, if 78% of the people that are supposedly going to go vote for you are saying that that's not really as a priority, then why are you doing this? I don't know, but they do make a lot of arrests, so confiscate shit on a shit ton of fentanyl. So his border policy under Biden is somehow working. It's simultaneously an open border, but also, yeah, because it's a made-up problem. That seems like manageable to me. It's a made-up problem. it's a made up problem in the sense that like the complaints that are legitimate can be solved if they wanted to be put you know, it can be solved if they really wanted to. Like, you could put more infrastructure for like judges, courts to make to handle the like stacks of asylum cases that instead of taking years, it would take less. You know, things like that. But these people are not going to put funds towards that. The fentanyl is coming through ports of entry, like in trucks, by American citizens. It's not a made-up problem; it's a manufactured problem. Yeah, yeah. The border tallied up to 249,000 arrests on the Mexican border in December, up 31% in 191,000. In November, 13% from 22,000 in December, the previous all-time high. Mexicans accounted for 56,000 arrests, while Venezuelans cost for 46, erasing much of the decline that followed the start of the deportation flights to Venezuela in October. Arrests of Guatemalans have surged, while Honduras and Colombians running at the top 5 nationalities. Yeah, dude. Wow. We could see huge inflation and there was 0 border crossings. Anyways. The thing is, it's not a crisis regardless, so then why is Biden talking like a freaking Republican and threatening to impose the same, very well, like he's asking for the same legislation that they would, you know, that these people would immediately implement should they win. So like, again, the response to like these far right people getting all bothered by brown people should have been put down immediately. They should have just nationalized the Texas Guard and let Border Patrol do their thing. It's political theater, but it is kabuki theater. That is always a question. To appease the base, but he also needs to push omnibus bills, concessions, and look tougher than Republicans. Yeah, but he doesn't need to do that because they're always going to if looking tougher than Republicans mean being more right wing than they are is like silly because nobody on the Democratic side wants this. Like, nobody voted for Biden because he was going to be like tough on the border. I don't see any progressives or Republicans addressing the root problem, which is why we need to lift embargoes on the countries and establish good political and economic ties. Yeah, 100%. 100%. He wants 100% NOK Life. They should have prosecuted Abbott over a year ago for trafficking people around the country. Yes. They will also accuse him, but the point is to lower that impact as much as possible. The Democratic base doesn't care. Like 78% of the Democratic base is not the Democratic base is not interested in this. He's not aiming at people who are going to vote for him anyways. He's supposed to. This is silly. This is silly because, like, while it may be the case that he wants Republicans to vote for him, that's not going to happen. Like, people who are Republicans and hate Trump are going to stay home. Trump's base is pretty solidified. How do you think he should act is not how he's acting. Right, and that's why I'm criticizing him. I think this is wrong. I think that this only gives credence to the far right. This is weakness. That's fair, but that's not... But that's how he operates either way. Yeah, and like, why am I supporting a party if I'm just going to end up with like MAGA proposals? Do you see where the problems start to arise? Like, if I'm a Democratic voter and I know that, I know how the Republican Party feels, and I'm specifically choosing the opposite of that, supposedly on paper. Supposedly on paper, I'm supposed to be choosing the opposite, right? Because that's how it's supposed to work. Not Republican, then why am I getting Republican policies? I didn't ask for this. Nobody, in fact, nobody on the Democratic side is asking for this. Nobody's asking for this. And the problem is, you need to get your base out to vote. Okay? Forget about trying to win Republicans over. That's not happening. Republicans are voting for Trump. Okay? And the few that aren't voting for Trump, they're not going to vote for Biden. Those 0.0% 0.01% that aren't going to vote for Trump, they're going to stay home. He's going to take Haley's voter base? Nah, that's not a good chunk at all. I think you're overestimating that. And a lot of those people are just going to stay home anyways. If anything, you should go full socialist. Even if they block him, people will get behind him. Yep. But this border vote is not even decided yet. No, it's not about the decisions or whether or not she overtook DeSantis. But, I mean, come on. Like, what percentages are we talking about? Like, did DeSantis have like a significant amount of the voter base? The answer to that is no. The voters, Haley's voter base doesn't like Trump, which is very small. Half of Haley's voter base has named Coke. But this border vote is not even decided. No, it's not about the fact that it's law or not law. My problem is, why am I getting MAGA proposals when I didn't ask for this? Why is the response to the far right holding a fit because they lost at a Supreme Court hearing is like, it's just capitulation. Not being the underdog is bad for Trump. They should just send their donations directly to Carol. That will save Trump's paperwork. Thing is, DeSantis' voter base is endorsing Trump. Haley's not. That's Haley's voter base. Let's be honest. It's not that much. Let's be honest. And I think the simulacra kind of hit it on the head. It's enough to beat DeSantis. Fair enough. But at the end of the day, these people are either going to vote for Trump. They'll either swallow their pride and go vote for Trump, or they'll stay home. Biden would do an Iran-Contra right now if available to him. That's the biggest opponent, and even if it's 10 to 20K. I typically like states being able to do what they want democratically with their people, but I think this Texas stuff is straight up human rights violation that goes against the foundation of this country. This country was founded on immigration and being a safe refuge, supposedly. But yeah, none of that. Yeah, that's not what this is about. In this point, like you're right. You do need a federal response, and like you can't just let this slide. You can't just let this slide. There's no dealing with this. There's no negotiations here. Okay, they lost, like unequivocally. All the way up to the Supreme Court. Like there's no dealing with this. It's done, supposedly, or it was supposed to be done. And now, because like Biden has decided to be weak, it now shows that like at any point you can just throw a fit and threaten sedition, and you'll just get what you want. Biden will ask for the bill himself. Do you see the issue is not whether or not the bill passes. I don't care. That's not the point. The bill passing isn't the issue. The bill passing is not what I'm discussing. It's the ramifications for the attitude and rhetoric that has been adapted to deal with this. And nothing will come of it, but it's all show for the elections. Possibly, but it doesn't matter. It emboldens the far right. And the fact of the matter is, liberals are just not capable or not equipped to deal with fascists. It's just the truth. And you know what that's going to end up? It's going to end up with everybody suffering. It's going to end up with everybody suffering because of this. All right, folks. Are you saying that MAGA's ambushed Biden and he can't win? I'm saying that, yeah, MAGA is right now out. MAGA's getting everything that they want. I'm not saying he can't win. I'm saying that Joe Biden's giving way too much. Always low-key think Biden lost this election. Biden and Trump is probably 40-60 at the moment. MAGA is very constrained. It's much harder to win the generals. I don't know about that. I'm not confident. The fact that I'm not confident, I'm just not confident. I'm just not confident that it's quite possible that the Democratic base has been depressed so much that it does provide an avenue for Trump to win. There is an avenue for him to win. Both cases, even as high, Trump didn't win the popular vote against weak opponents. I'm not saying he can't win, but given the baggage, it's an uphill battle. I think there's an avenue for him to win. That's the problem. Like, are you familiar with the concept of Hobson's choice? I don't know. I'm not. There's always an avenue. That's why people need to not underestimate, even if it's small. Yeah, and the issue is that I don't think it's small. It's way too possible for my comfort. It's way too possible for my comfort. Honestly, I don't know what Republicans are even mad about. Joe's literally the candidate that they want. He's doing everything they want. That's true. I don't think Biden's done yet. Besides, remember, Trump MAGA hosted a January 6th. People don't forget that. That's not the issue. People know that they're dangerous. People know, and people are not about the whole like, oh, I'm good. I'm a Democrat and now I'm gonna vote Republican. They're just gonna stay home. They're just gonna stay home. That's the issue. All right, folks. Unfortunately, I have to get going. It is time for me to go eat. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate it. Thank you for all the follows. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the subs. I appreciate it. Even if you don't care, you let that shit slide. It's a legit coup. Yep. Thank you all for stopping by. Thank you, Michael Hasser. Thank you, Heat, for modding the chat. I appreciate it. Thank you all, as always, folks. Yes, join the Discord. Don't forget, the last Saturday of the month, there's a movie night. Check out the merch. Like the stream. Subscribe. Like. Do all this stuff. Spread the word far and wide. As always, folks, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I will be on. I hope to see you guys in the next one tomorrow. Thank you, Masslander. I appreciate it. See ya. I gotta go eat, folks. All right, folks, I'm heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye.